afternoon, everyone. I am Samantha Mowat. I'm a clairvoyant psychic and a contactee, and today I'm going to talk to you about something I think is really important. It's actually about contact. Now, when you're a kid, if you're a contactee, there's a few things you're going to go through. You're going to quite often see things that other people don't, whether it's in your waking life or as you're like going to sleep at night or even in your astral projections and stuff like that. But it's kind of different than what people are anticipating. The way in which the media portrays stuff like this is they think that these kids that go through contact see beings every single night, and that's not necessarily the way it works. You might go through a period of time where you have a lot of contact, so you could have a couple of weeks a year where you're having like 5 or 6 encounters over the course of a month, and that could be kind of slow for the next 6 months and then pick up again. And what I found when I was a kid and going through contact was quite often I would see weird things out of the corner of my eye, whether it's seeing like a person standing there, and when you kind of like see someone out of your peripheral and they're off to your side, but then you turn your head to go look at them and they're not there. That's actually the beginning aspect of your clairvoyance coming into play. And so what I've found with a lot of people that are contactees hey, sweetie, is they'll actually go through the aspect of having their psychic abilities activating in the daytime, in the nighttime, but they'll be dismissive of it. But when it comes to being their like evening, and think of it this way: if it's nighttime and you're a kid and your parents read you a bedtime story and they put you to bed and they turn off the lights, well, I found that when I was little, my clairvoyance would go into overdrive because I no longer had all the distractions around me. There was no longer the TV being on in the house. There was no longer other people around me to distract me from the minor energetic things that were going on. And instead, what would end up happening was I would start to notice other like shadow people moving around, or you'd start to see like little sparks of light that were coming into the room. Sometimes I would wake up and I would see a being present in the room, sometimes floating over the bed or just coming into the space, and that's completely normal for contactees. And when I was a kid, I would sometimes tell my parents about this, like, oh, it's okay, it's just a bad dream. And so, like a lot of contactees, I kind of just took that experience and all the other ones and I like put them away in a little section of my mind and be like, okay, I'll process this later, I'll deal with this later. Whereas what I have found was by doing that, it actually suppressed a lot of my psychic abilities when I was younger. It made it so even though I would have these experiences, and even though I was raised with a family that acknowledged the existence of extraterrestrials and multidimensionals and the nature that a lot of these beings are interacting with humanity, there was still an aspect of minor cognitive dissonance going on even within that aspect of a more awakened family. And so, what I have tried to do instead was, as my family is going through contact, I encourage journals. So, you have a funny experience? Great, write it in your journal. You have an astral projection where you see a certain type of being? Great, write it down, draw it out. You see a ghost of a family member when you're at school and you're seeing them while you're doing journal time? Great, write it down. Stuff like that helps to establish a stronger level of connection in towards the psychic abilities, but also helps to take the experiences that you're having, especially when you're young, and allows you to remember them at a later date, which is important. But it also allows for you to recognize and acknowledge what you're going through without being dismissive of that. And I think that's a very important component. When I was a kid, quite often I would find myself sleepwalking. I'd find myself walking towards like the sliding glass doors in our kitchen, or I'd find myself standing in front of the front door or standing in front of the large living room windows, and I'd be like, how the heck did I come to be here? Why am I here? And sometimes when you have stuff like that, when you're a kid, you think, oh, okay, I just had a funny dream. Not realizing that stuff like that is actually you being put back from a physical like encounter with extraterrestrial multidimensional beings. Or sometimes you'll wake up as you're about to have an encounter happen. That's the other side of it as well. And so when we look at these components all together and how they work, it's a little more complicated than what people are initially projecting, because they think with contact you're going to all of a sudden have like this white light coming in through the bedroom window on an angle, and you're going to start to see the white light becoming level, and you'll start to see this being just coming through the window. And yeah, sometimes that does happen, but the ways in which people can be taken in their encounters can be so many different varieties. You can have a vortex open up in the wall. You could find yourself floating up through the ceiling, or you can find yourself having orbs coming into your space and collecting you and then taking you out through an orb going out towards craft. You can find yourself physically walking out of your home and then being outside and then going up onto a craft. There really are so many different varieties in which kids can be taken or we can be taken. And it's not because I'm trying to make you afraid that I'm trying to make you be aware of this. But what I'm trying to get you to do is actually to recognize how, if you are a parent of children who are going through contact, getting your children to recognize the energetic patterns that are in place. So, for instance, when I'm having more of my physical encounters rather than my astral encounters, I will notice some things going on. I will probably wake up more exhausted in the morning after a physical encounter than an astral encounter. And same with children, they'll go through the same thing. Whereas if it's a physical encounter, you're more likely to feel a lot of energetic shifting and movement around the house in the hours leading up to going to sleep that night, because you'll either see like little sparks of light appearing, or you'll see mists of energy coming around. You might see beings moving out of the corner of your eyes. You might see invisible entities, which is kind of like, when I say invisible entities, I mean beings that are cloaked. And when I was younger, that was an easier way for me to understand what it was I was seeing. I would call them invisible entities because I didn't understand the whole cloaking aspect when I was younger. And so, what I mean when I'm saying that is, have you ever seen like a mirage, or like on a really hot day? You look down the road and you see those beautiful little heat waves that kind of going up like this off the asphalt. It's kind of like that energetically, but rather than just being like off of like one entire area, say 5 feet wide or something like that, it's more so like in the shape of like an oval or a body shape. Things like that are more common when it's cloaked entities. You'll start to see them moving around your space. And so that's something that I've really taken note of. Often you can also feel things like the vibration of craft being above the house. If you're having physical encounter occurring either for you or someone else in that household that night. And what that can feel like really depends craft to craft, because sometimes the vibration can feel very light, very tingly. Other times it can feel like a deep, heavy pulsating going around. And it really does depend, because the different crafts do feel different ways depending on their level of density, the technology. There really are a number of factors in place here. And I'm still trying to figure that out, because I've been taking notes and trying to recall all the information as I go about my day-to-day life to start categorizing which groups are using which craft and how the different craft feel for my own notes and for my family notes, because stuff like that really is quite important. Now, we can't just say, oh, all the gray craft feel like this and all the plating craft feel like that, because it's not quite that cut and dry. Because even within any of these different groups, there's a number of different technologies that can be used in place. In the same way that our militaries have different types of aircraft or vehicles, it's kind of like that. There can be different models in place. And so it's not just cut and dry that every time you see a gray, there's going to be a brushed silver craft in place. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think you do. And so, what I have found as I'm going through the aspect of raising my children and looking at how contact occurs with them, you know, I find it's easiest, if you look at the aspect of it, to take notes, really thorough notes, things that you may think are mundane or irrelevant. But for us, I've noticed if one of us has a physical encounter where we're more likely to walk out of the house, I'll often see that the front door is unlocked at the bottom but latched for some reason. And we check all of our doors before we go to bed every night, and we make sure everything's in place. And it's not like our kids go around and just like mess with their heads and open stuff like that, because I have bells on all of my doors. Not like electronic bells, but like little like round bells. That way, if someone opens the door, I can hear it. And the thing I have found is that even if you like lightly move the door to slightly unlock it, like try like twist a handle or like push a handle down to open it, the dogs will actually hear it and they tend to start like barking and howling. And so it's not like they're doing this to be disruptive or deceptive. This is just one of our signs that contact has occurred. Um, some of the other things that you might end up noticing if you're a parent who has children that are contactees is that your kids may have very vivid dreams. Sometimes they're symbolic in nature, where the kids may be seeing like large stuffed animals that are talking to them, when this could be a screen memory of things like the different beings projecting into the consciousness of the child something that they associate as being kind or benevolent. Think of like the clowns that people saw in like the 1950s, 1960s, stuff like that in their screen memories. which is a less common one now, is just these screen memories do tend to evolve with time, which is interesting. Um, the other thing that I think you should really take note of when you have, like, if you're a contactee and you're raising little contactees, is allowing for them to talk to you with no judgment. And so with my kids, I make it so, okay, if you are going through contact and if you aren't sure if it's a contact experience or a dream, we can still talk about it either way. We can still write about it and we can decide later if this was contact with extraterrestrial or multidimensional or elemental or dealing with a dead person or stuff like that, because it's really quite complicated compared to what people think. You have to look at the psychic ability aspect that goes with being a contactee and recognize that it's so much more than what people are expecting. When people think of contact, they think of just, oh, okay, well, I'm an empath and I can feel other people's emotions. Well, yeah, there's that too. But it doesn't mean in every single moment that you're feeling absolutely everyone's emotion. And depending upon the groups that you're interacting with at any given time, certain psychic abilities will be amplified. Sometimes you'll go through periods where your telekinesis is stronger, or your telepathy, or your clairvoyance, or your empathic nature. And it really does depend upon the vibratory aspects that are being activated within you. Because many of the beings that we're interacting with, they have a lot more of the psychic aspect within themselves as well. They're not all just profoundly clairvoyant or profoundly telepathic. Some of them are, depending upon like the individual being and depending upon the race and what their psychic gifts are, that can help further expand upon your own as well. And so you really want to take this into consideration with, like, let's say you have an encounter. And let's say you wake up in the middle of the night. Here's one that I've had. I've woken up in the middle of the night. I'm standing on my deck. I'm outside. I'm like, oh, okay, there's a gray on my roof and it's looking down at me. And I may find like the next day that my level of empathic abilities may be diminished, but my claircognizance can be increased, which is where you get like downloads of information coming into the head about information that you couldn't possibly know before. It's just like you suddenly know something is accurate, and this is the information. Like, let's say you're watching a movie with a friend on Netflix, and the friend's like, oh, I wonder what year this movie was made. You might hear in your head 1954, and they're like, oh, look, it was made in 1954. So, like, stuff like that can be more common with that type of being. Whereas if you're encountering beings that are more heart focused, more love based, you may find that your empathic abilities are amplified. And so you may find that, oh, I have these multidimensional encounters where I notice that these beautiful orbs of light are coming in and they're very like colorful, like yellow or pink or whatever. And then I will find myself in the presence of these other beings, and they're feeling very love-based, and they're providing healing for me. And then when I come back the next day, and I find that I'm going through my day-to-day life, I may feel more connected to my plants, and my puppies, and my kitties, and whatever, and feel more love and compassion to others. And so you have to notice what the patterns are for you with the beings that you're interacting with. Pardon me, speaking too much. And the other thing that you really want to do with this is, especially if you do have kids that are going through contact, recognizing the energetic patterns in place for yourself and for your children is going to help each of you better determine how to handle the contact that you're going through or that they're going through. Because some of you will be parents who won't have memories of your contact, but you'll be raising these beautiful little starseed children that are having contact, and you may not be sure how to handle it. And so, what you're going to want to do in order to help them further is go from the beginning of your life and every weird paranormal experience that you've had. Write it down. I don't care if it's something like, okay, when I was a kid, I knew I would have 3 children. I could sense it in my soul, in my being, knowing that this would happen one day. Write that down. Or I knew that at this age, everything would start getting easier, and oh, look, it did. Write it down. Or I dreamt about a car accident for my aunt, and my aunt died. Write it down. That is really important. Every psychic bit of information or weird paranormal event that you had happen, write it down. The reason being is you take that information, you allow for it to come to the surface of your mind, and then once you've done that, you allow for other information that you've suppressed and locked away in the cute little sections of your mind, and you help to bring that forward, allowing for you to better recognize just how many strange and interesting events that have occurred for you, but also it gives your family a record of this, which you don't have to share this with anybody. You really don't. I don't share most of the stuff that's happened with me or things that have happened to my family members with other people, because honestly, it's not their bloody business. But the thing that you want to do is for your children, you want to have a record of, hey, within our family, these are what we know that has happened. And this allows for them to recognize, okay, I'm not alone with this. This is fairly normal, and it's okay because I'm still going to turn out fine, and there's no reason to be afraid of it. And I have found that to be one of the greatest blessings that I could have done, because in the event of something happening to you, you want for your children to have that record. That way they can better understand the history of contact within their family. Well, I'm going to take the dogs because I've got 3 wild and crazy puppies who are being so good and not walking near the bluffs, and I'm going to keep walking them. But I hope you have a beautiful day. I wish you peace, love, and light. Bye. Hi, guys. Hi. Oh, okay. Never mind. Here they come.